saw an article from foxnews.com about Luka Doncic's defense. And Paul George is going to end up the loser in the Metroplex. This is probably going to get spun, no doubt about it. But here's the headline. Paul George unleashes brutal assessment of Luka Doncic. And here's a little trick for whenever you're consuming news. Whenever you're getting individual quotes and not double quotes, the person writing it is full of garbage and spinning something. That's my rule of journalism. Whenever someone puts up just the individual, one quote on each side and not double quotes, it's going to get spun. So the Paul George quote is, some people just can't play defense. So this is his, I didn't know that he had a podcast, Podcast P.
All right.
With Paul George. Some people just can't play defense, and that's okay, he said about Luka. As good as he is offensively, some people just are not gifted defensively and vice versa. Dennis Rodman, great on defense. That's not his defense. And that's it. That's the only quote. As Fox News even pouring it on the Mavericks with our embarrassing end of the season, Paul George unleashes brutal assessment of Luka. It's one of those things, though, I've always wondered about in sports, really NBA defense. How can you be blowing by everybody with the ball in your hands? You're quicker, you're faster, you're an amazing athlete. You can get to wherever you want on the floor, and then defensively, you're just helpless. It has to just be effort, right?
A lot of defense is effort. I mean, guys that are, give me a undersized, weak statue in in NBA history.
Defensively?
Steve
Nash?
Well, okay, so Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr, no matter how hard he tried, was never going to be a lockdown defender against Michael Jordan.
Right.
That was never going to happen. He was never going to be able to be a lockdown defender against Jason Kidd. Right? He was just limited size, strength, all that stuff. So you could try. You still got to have the physical tools. Kyrie's got the physical tools. So does Luka.
I don't. Does
You
Luka
got
have
size, strength?
Luka lacks quickness.
Luka's big. Luka's not quick. Like Luka's whole ability to get by people on offense is like when you hear players talk about it, it's how slow he moves.
It's
like
guile.
It's
a lot of guile.
That the way he operates, the way he slows the game down and paces the game, it's really difficult for defenders to adjust to.
Yeah, but
It's
Jason
his size.
Kidd wasn't exactly the fastest dude in the world, and he was a pretty dang good defender.
He was. But, I mean, he was also a lot of what he would do. The smaller point guards used to give him problems.
He was quicker than Luka, though. I mean, not even close.
Yep, I would think so.
Look at Jason Kidd, fast break highlights, and you'll see how much faster and quicker he is than Luka. Nico Harrison, Mavs GM, did the end of the Mavs presser yesterday, and he was asked, what was the biggest difference this year's team versus last year?
One of the things, if you look at the difference between last year and this year, we literally just didn't. I mean, statistically, we just didn't play good defense. But last year, we were much better. So that's why I don't think I would have said defense last year, because we were I think a top 7 or top 10 team defensively. So that was actually good. Now we didn't block shots and we didn't rebound well, but in terms of defense, we were pretty good last year. It's not about big or small, just defense overall. Like, we weren't very good this year, and so that's going to be a focus.
Choppy, you found an article saying that the defense is not Luka and Kyrie's fault?
Well, according to the greatness of 538 and analytics, it's everybody else. So, interestingly enough, and this is a very long article, so I'll try to do as good as I can of
Everything 538 does is long.
Just read it word by word.
I could.
That's what I do.
So, the offense actually really improved. Since Kyrie and Luka teamed up, they're the 10th best offensive rating, but the 4th worst defensive rating. All right. And part of this is not necessarily the reason and the cause and the fault of Luka and Kyrie. Since February 8th, Irving led the Mavs in offensively, off-ball cuts, second in handoffs. All right. And their efficiency went up to the point where this could have been a real benefit, a very difficult team to match up with in the postseason. But the cost of adding those extra abilities for an offense put them, as they say, it put the postseason cart before the regular season horse. Solving the offensive problems introduced a ton of defensive ones. Now, Irving and Luka received a lion's share of the criticism for the defense, but they're not at fault. Excluding garbage time, the Nets were better on defense with Irving on the floor than off. And so too were the Mavericks. Opposing possessions involving pick and rolls and isolations defended by Irving or Doncic were less efficient than when other Mavs defenders faced those play types on average. Also, the two stars were Dallas's two best defenders. All right? The two stars were their two best defenders against opposing shots, holding shooters to the lowest effective field goal percentages as well, according to Second Spectrum, which is an analytics site. Neither was intended to be a defensive savior, yet they were among the most effective defenders on the team. Why? Why did they fail? Because they were the fourth worst team at defending the rim after his first game in Dallas. Dwight, Powell, Maxey, and Christian Wood combined to allow opponents to shoot more than 6 percentage points better than expected on shots at the rim or in the paint since he took the floor.
What about JaVale McGee?
What about Christian Wood?
What about Christian
He'll
Wood?
block shots. You won a game. Who was that they played earlier this year where the game got into overtime and they won in overtime because Christian Wood blocked like 5 shots? Like, I mean, it just again goes to the frustration about Jason Kidd in these rotations for me.
Did Tim McMahon not change your mind whatsoever in giving us the inside story on Christian Wood? That's not affecting you at all, justifying him not getting on the floor as much as we all wanted?
Nope.
Why?
Because that's great. That I'm sorry he doesn't show up for meetings, and I understand there's discipline related to that. When your team's as bad as it is, you need to put good players out there. You don't have the personnel to be able to send messages due to meeting times.
Yeah, Nico had kind of a harsh quote about Seawood yesterday. Like, it's just not about scoring. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. Not just about scoring. You got to do other things. He's about to be what? Is this going to be his 8th team? His next one? His 8th different team?
Is it really?
He's doing the Jimmy Jackson tour.
Yeah, it is.
Just bouncing around.
So bottom line.
Bottom line, it's not Kyrie and Luka's fault. The defense stunk. They had nobody helping on the inside either. And if you get back that first wall of defenders, to have guys shoot 6 percentage points higher against your team than they do on average, tells me that there's no help defense at the rim. And how do you get better with that? I mean, well, having a 7-footer out there would help. And they've got him. They just didn't play defense.
Nico on his impression of whether Luca and Kyrie can even work together if Kyrie stays.
I think the two work together. I think Luka and Kai work together. I think I've said this several times to most of you. I think when you have that talented of a player and that talented of two players, I think they work together. I really think it's the players around them. I think the players around them kind of knowing their role with having those two guys out on the floor at the same time. I think that's the thing that we need to work on.
So there's Nico Harrison yesterday, end of the season press conference. 877-881-1053 is the truckrack.com text line to hit us up. We're live on the Fan Cam, Twitch, and YouTube. And Bobby, you were trying to figure out how to build this thing. As we look towards the offseason, how difficult it is to build around just Luka. You just taking him, or are you factoring Kyrie in?
I think you cannot build this team with Kyrie in mind. Even if you're going to keep him around, I don't think you can build around Kyrie, because Kyrie, you have no idea when that's going to go south. It will go south at some point, and if you've built your team around what Kyrie does, then you're going to be stuck looking for a Kyrie type of player when it inevitably blows up. So for me, it's still the focus around Luka, and why it's been so difficult. We're 5 years into this thing now where, from what I can tell in sports, this has got to be the most difficult attempt to build around an elite player that I can ever think of. It shouldn't be this difficult to build around somebody who's as good as Luka is. And I'm not saying that as some sort of just searing indictment of the Mavericks, because I think the Mavericks have tried to figure things out. They tried to bring in a Kristaps Porzingis type. They've brought in Kyrie. They've tried to find players that make it work. I think it's a challenge to find somebody who complements well what Luka does and how Luka paces the game. Most players want to get in this era, they want to get the ball going. They want to score quick. They want to move the ball. That's not what Luka wants to do. So to me, it feels like
it sounds like you basically need to be a spot up shooter and wait for him to find you.
Yeah, you got to be cool with sitting in the corner.
Super. I mean, honestly, and I know it's a term that has become like nails on a chalkboard to Mavericks fans, the 3-and-D.
Yep.
But honestly, athletic super role players, ability to rebound, play defense, that probably makes the most sense. As much as that sounds like just a 2011 strategy that the Mavericks won with Dirk with, and everybody says that's not sustainable. That's probably the best avenue is like, look, make this whole show basically about Luka and have really talented athletic role players who are willing to play defense. They've got to get bigger. They've got to get more athletic. They need to find what?
We've said this about every great player in the history of basketball, basically. Michael Jordan shot too much. We said the same thing about LeBron James, that he neutered the Hall of Fame games of Chris Bosh and maybe Kevin Love. He reduced them to spot-up three-point shooters. Kobe Bryant, way too selfish. Why would anyone go play with him? Why would you want to go play with James Harden? So I think that, this is a fair topic to bring up, an observation, but we've done this with everybody.
Yeah, and I think just
we don't really do it with Giannis.
Not to the
the ball in his hand.
I don't even those criticisms that have existed, like you neutered Bosh as a Hall of Famer and you neutered Kevin Love, and you did it on the way to 3 titles. Like, I mean, Dallas has clearly not cracked this code yet.
Well, they had, 3 Hall of Famers too.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that neutering them as a Hall of Famer, they still went to 3 titles along the way, or won 3 titles. They went to 5 or 6 or whatever it was. But to me, I would go find somebody to give you a sign and trade on Kyrie this offseason. Go look for any sort of athletic 5 that you can get back in a trade. Go draft a 2-way player at the power forward, and then roll with the smaller backcourt with Jaden Hardy, Josh Green, Luka Doncic, and that's your rotation.